Obviously, today is a time to remember Justice Scalia's legacy. I plan to fulfill my constitutional responsibilities to nominate a successor in due time. There will be plenty of time for me to do so and for the Senate to fulfill its responsibility to give that person a fair hearing and a timely vote. These are responsibilities that I take seriously, as should everyone. They're bigger than any one party. They are about our democracy.
Let's discuss for a few moments the issue of legacy. First, that of a Supreme Court justice who shaped what America is at this moment and what it may become, and the potential legacy of a man who wants to be your president and may have once again let a temperament fly in public that would make people wonder if he is the right person to select that replacement. Let's welcome the veteran Republican politician, president of the fiscally conservative organization Club for Growth, focused on the economy and cutting taxes, David McIntosh. David, thanks so much for joining us, and we're going to get to that individual who wants to be president in just a moment, but I want to get your comment here right up front about Antonin Scalia, because here's the simple question: the legacy that he leaves behind, and why why they desperately need to pay attention to the fight over his replacement. David?
Thank you. Justice Scalia is the Supreme Court justice in the last 30 years who's had the most impact on our nation's Constitution. He was one of the early advocates, along with Judge Bork, of a method of interpreting the Constitution that said we're going to interpret it based on what it means, on what the words said and meant when the founders wrote it, and apply those to today and today's circumstances. That was revolutionary after the very liberal justices that had started coming onto the court with Franklin Roosevelt, and he persuaded both liberals and conservatives that to have moral credibility, the Supreme Court interprets the law, they don't make the law, and they should look to what the meaning of that law was in the original version of the Constitution. That's huge. He had a huge impact. For me personally, I miss him terribly. He was one of my professors at law school. When I was elected to Congress, he came over to the Capitol and swore me in. He's been a hero of mine because of his intellect and his faithfulness to his principles, but he's also just a wonderful man, was a dear father to his family, and we will miss him.
Let's talk about those principles here for a couple moments here. And a lot of what you're describing is what many people consider to be being conservative. Now, the Club for Growth has come out against Donald Trump, rather vociferously as well, for not being conservative. Now, just yesterday, Ted Cruz went after Trump for exactly the same reason, and here's what he said.
If an additional liberal justice goes to the court, we're one justice away from the Second Amendment being written out, and if Donald Trump becomes president, the Second Amendment will be written out of the Constitution, because it is abundantly clear that Donald Trump is not a conservative. He will not invest the capital to confirm a conservative. And so the result will be the same, whether it's Hillary, Bernie, or Donald Trump.
David, couple of minutes that we have here, let me get something right out in the open here, because Club for Growth has taken out about $1.5 million to run a new TV ad telling the South Carolina voters that he is not conservative enough. Now, I want you to just answer this, if you will. Donald Trump says that the Club for Growth demanded a $1 million contribution from him, which eventually they did not get. He has used words such as extortion for your group to try and get that $1 million from him. Answer him back, please.
You know, that's classic Donald Trump, where he doesn't like the truth, so he makes up something else and starts attacking somebody who's questioning him. He did that with George W. Bush in the debate on last weekend, and we saw where that got him. The fact was, Donald invited us to his office, said, "What can I do to help you?" We said, "Well, if you're a real conservative, you can contribute to the Club for Growth. We disagree with you about taxes going up and about trade, but that's how you could help us." He, of course, never sent that money and then completely made up the story about that meeting. The truth is that Donald Trump has a terrible record on economic issues. He's been for tax increases in the past, suddenly changed his mind when he started running for president. He's for eminent domain abuse, where he wants the property be taken by the government and given to developers like himself. He's declared bankruptcy through his companies 4 times, given to Hillary Clinton and a lot of the Democrats in his political giving. he's just not a conservative, and people are starting to see his true colors, I think, as the campaign goes on.
David, we'll revisit you again here in the near future, but with about 20 seconds I have left right here, in your opinion, then, is Donald Trump simply the most dangerous thing that could possibly happen to the conservative movement in America?
Yes, because he's trying to hijack it into something it's not. He says he'll replace Obamacare, but he'll replace it with Trump Care, where the government runs it under Donald Trump. He's not for property rights. I don't really believe he'll do a tax cut because he says he still supports the tax increases that he was for in the past. His style says we've got to get rid of Washington. We agree. The problem is in the leaders in Washington. He's just not the solution.
And we will revisit this again. David McIntosh, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for spending the time with us. We'll do it again. An interesting question that could tell the tale of one GOP candidate's November future. That's next here on The Hardline.